The cake was pink. My smile was fake. And just as my husband began thanking everyone for celebrating our baby girl, he paused, his voice shaking, then looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Why don't you tell them who the real father is?" In one moment, the affair I thought I had buried destroyed everything and everyone in the room. I should have told him the truth before it ever got this far, before the invitations were sent out, before the balloons were blown up, before the gifts piled up on our living room floor, before he stood in front of a crowd of friends, family, and coworkers, trying his best to believe I was still the woman he had once promised his life to, but I didn't. I let it all unfold because I was too much of a coward to stop it. I convinced myself that if I kept pretending it might all go away, that the lie would fade, that the guilt would dissolve, and that somehow the baby I was carrying could just be his, that maybe the math would stretch. Maybe time would blur the edges, but time doesn't blur the truth. It sharpens it. I met Ethan when I was 23 and still living with 2 roommates in a noisy apartment that always smelled like someone else's leftovers. He was 27, working in IT for a healthcare company, and just about the most boring man I'd ever dated. That's what I thought at first. Too quiet, too stable, too consistent. No tattoos, no messy past. Just good at his job, polite. 2 strangers always home by 6. But Ethan had a way of making me feel seen. Not just noticed seen. He remembered tiny things. The way I took my coffee, the name of my childhood cat, the song I hummed while brushing my teeth. He was steady in a way I didn't know I needed. No chaos, no manipulation. Just a man who showed up when he said he would and held me like I mattered. He proposed on our 2-year anniversary. Nothing dramatic, just him, kneeling in our tiny kitchen, holding out a simple ring with shaking hands. I cried before I even said yes. He looked so scared, so hopeful, like he'd spent weeks rehearsing. I wrapped my arms around him and told him I couldn't wait to build a life together. And we did. For a while, everything was good. Better than good. We moved into a small house on a quiet street. He built me a reading nook by the window. We'd take evening walks, hand in hand, planning out future vacations we never quite took. Ethan made me feel safe, secure, loved. But that security started to feel like stagnation. The predictability that once comforted me began to suffocate. He still looked at me like I was magic, but I started craving sparks, not steadiness. I didn't realize how badly I missed excitement until it showed up in the form of someone I should have never let near me. His name was Bryce. He was the graphic designer assigned to a campaign I was managing. He was everything. Ethan wasn't impulsive, loud, a little arrogant, and deeply magnetic. The kind of man who didn't ask, just took. The kind who flirted in a way that made you feel like the only woman in the room. And I let him. It started with innocent lunches, then texts, then late nights at the office we both pretended were just deadlines. The first time he kissed me, it was after a late meeting that dragged past 9. The office was nearly empty, just the 2 of us and the quiet hum of the vending machines down the hall. I had been complaining about how tired I was, how I barely saw Ethan anymore with everything going on. I didn't mean it as an invitation. At least, that's what I told myself. Bryce leaned against my desk, loosened his tie, and handed me a bottle of water he'd grabbed from the break room. "You look exhausted," he said, watching me too closely. "Your husband making you do all the heavy lifting at home, too." I laughed, trying to keep it casual. "No, Ethan's great. He's just not much of a talker these days." It was a throwaway comment. A tired wife venting after a long day? But Bryce latched onto it. "Guys like him don't know what they have," he said. "If you were mine, I wouldn't be able to keep my hands off you." I should have shut it down right then. I should have changed the subject, mentioned my marriage, reminded him I wasn't available, but I didn't. I just smiled. The kind of awkward half smile you give when you don't know whether to laugh or walk away. Then he moved closer. "I've been trying to ignore it," he said, voice low. "But every time you walk past my office, I can't think straight." "Bryce, ... I started, still not really believing this was happening, but he was already leaning in, slowly, giving me time to pull away, and I didn't. His lips were on mine before I could say another word, warm, confident, like he'd kissed me in his head 100 times before. My back hit the edge of the desk, and for a second, just a second, I kissed him back. It was instinctual, like my body betrayed me before my brain caught up, and then I pulled away, breath shaky, heart pounding. "I'm married," I whispered, like maybe saying it out loud would undo it. He stepped back, eyes still locked on mine, not even pretending to be sorry. "Yeah," he said. "Tell me to stop then." I kissed him back, harder this time. When it ended, I just stood there staring at the floor, mouth dry, thoughts racing. I felt sick. Not because he kissed me, but because I let him. Because I kissed him back. That night, I went home and showered in silence. Ethan was already asleep when I crawled into bed beside him. He instinctively rolled over, draped his arm around me, and sighed like he was finally at peace. And I lay there wide awake, guilt burning through me, wondering how I'd ever look him in the eye again. I told myself it would never happen again, but deep down I already knew it would. The second time, I didn't even pretend to resist, and the third, I stopped thinking about Ethan altogether. The affair lasted 3 months. 3 months of excuses and lies. I told Ethan I was working overtime, that I had meetings, that I was tired, and he believed every word. He never questioned me. He trusted me completely, and that's what made it worse. The moment everything changed was the night I found out I was pregnant. I was alone in the bathroom, staring at the test like it might blink and tell me something else. I did the math. In my head, a dozen times, it didn't add up. Or maybe it did, just not in the way I wanted. Ethan was over the moon when I told him. He cried. He held me for so long, I started crying too, not from joy, but from guilt. He kissed my stomach and whispered that he couldn't wait to meet our little girl. And I just stood there, swallowing back the truth like poison. I told Bryce. The next day, he didn't react the way I expected. No panic, no concern, just a lazy smirk and a shrug. Can't be me. I'm sure you'll figure it out with your husband, he said. I should have ended it right then, told Ethan everything. Come clean. But instead, I blocked Bryce, wiped my phone, and threw myself into the fantasy of being a family again. I convinced myself I could bury the truth deep enough that it would never surface, that Ethan would never ask questions, that our daughter could grow up in a happy home, even if that home was built on a lie. We planned a baby shower, or rather, Ethan did. He arranged everything, booked the venue, made the guest list, even ordered the cake, pink inside because he said he wanted everyone to feel the joy he felt. He kept saying how proud he was, how lucky, how excited he was to be a father. And then the envelope came. It was anonymous, no return address, just our names typed neatly. Inside was a flash drive. Ethan waited until I was asleep to open it. I didn't know this until later, of course, but he watched it. Every frame, every picture of me and Bryce, every time-stamped kiss, every blurry hotel room door, all the proof I had tried so hard to destroy, handed to him in silence. I never found out who sent it. Maybe Bryce, maybe someone from work, maybe karma. The baby shower was 2 days later. Ethan didn't say a word to me that morning, just smiled, helped me get ready, held my hand in the car. I thought he had just been tired. I thought he was distracted, but he was preparing for the moment he'd stop pretending it was beautiful. The venue was filled with soft music and pink decorations. Laughter echoed around the room. People brought gifts, hugged me, told me how radiant I looked. Ethan stood beside me, smiling like his heart wasn't breaking. Then he tapped his glass. With a fork, I just want to say something, he said, his voice calm. Calm. Thank you all for being here. It means the world to us. I smiled. I remember that. Smiling like a fool, clutching my belly, standing beside the man whose heart I had crushed. I've dreamed about being a father for a long time, he continued. And when I found out we were having a little girl, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. People clapped. I squeezed his hand. But dreams change. Sometimes they fall apart. Sometimes you wake up. His voice broke a little. Just a crack. Barely audible. And sometimes the child you're celebrating isn't actually yours. Silence. Actual silence. Like sound had been vacuumed out of the room. I felt the blood drain from my face. I turned to him, whispering his name, but he didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, eyes glassy but steady. I want to thank you all for your support, he said, but I won't be staying. I'm sorry. He took a long breath, then turned to me for the first time all day. Tell them who the father is. And then he walked out. He didn't shout, didn't cry, just turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind gasps, whispers, and a version of me I never wanted to be. I didn't follow him. I couldn't. My legs wouldn't move, my mouth wouldn't open. I just stood there, frozen, surrounded by people who suddenly couldn't look me in the eye. The aftermath was a blur. My phone exploded with messages. Friends, family, coworkers. I ignored them all. I spent days in that nursery we'd been setting up, holding the tiny onesies we'd picked out together, sobbing into the rocking chair Ethan built with his own hands. He moved out that night. Came back while I was gone and took only his clothes, his books, and a photo of us from our honeymoon. He left the ring in my nightstand drawer. He hasn't spoken to me since. The baby is due in 6 weeks, and every time I feel her kick, I think of the man who was ready to love her like his own. The man I betrayed. The man I laughed with. The man who would have made the most amazing father if I hadn't destroyed everything we had for something that never mattered. I don't know what kind of mother I'll be, but I know one day she'll ask where her dad is. and I'll have to find the words to explain that he was never the problem. I was Dot, and that the only man who ever truly loved us both was the one I pushed away.